Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello there, and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity and community service work, volunteering, and just spreading positivity. We all are all about positivity here on the show, and I've got a very special guest with me today, none other than Mac Daddy Duds. Former Diamond Championship Wrestling Heavyweight Champion, Tag Team Champions, wrestles for numerous places across the country, and just a pleasure to have you on. Welcome to the show.
Hey, man, how's it going? Nice to meet you. Glad I could be a part of the show, and I like what you're doing, trying to spread the word a little bit about what we're doing inside and outside the ring. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So let's get started. Where did you grow up? Tell me about your upbringing.
I was born in Paducah, Kentucky, 1986, August 29th. I'm 36 years old, be 37 this year. Lived in Paducah most of my life until I joined the Army. And I joined the Army and left and ended up in Illinois and Missouri, and now I'm all the way at the bottom of the map on the Gulf Coast. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, you've been all over the country, so to speak. That's pretty cool. What got you into professional wrestling?
Pro wrestling. My earliest memory of it was watching it with my grandparents, my uncles, and they would just get so passionate about whatever was going on. Throwing stuff at the TV, flipping tables over, the whole 9 yards. And as a kid, I was just drawn to it. And it's one of those things that once I discovered it, I never grew out of it.
I love it. I love to hear that. Lifelong fan. Good to hear that. So being from Kentucky, I'd imagine you like some of that old, Gulas Welch. They were more of Tennessee, but they kind of borderline into the Kentucky area as well. You had your Jerry Lawlers, your Tojo Yamamotos, Jackie Fargo.
Yeah, I mean, you're right on the money with what was in Kentucky. The main promotion that everybody, excuse me, the main promotion everybody associates Paducah with is the ICW, International Championship Wrestling, ran by the Pafos. Yeah, and so the ring that I actually learned how to wrestle in and trained in was a former ring of the Pafos. It was old and beat up by the time that I got to it in the early 2000s, but that ring was still in use until like maybe 10 years ago. So that thing had 40, 50 years on it. Pretty crazy, some of the history that went through there. But Paducah's not a big city, 20,000, something like that. Wrestling would be once a month, like a local indie show. You might get one once every couple months. Like I had to travel to Nashville, Tennessee, which is about 2.5 hours from Paducah, or St. Louis, Missouri, which is about 3.5 hours, to see any kind of local event or any kind of major event. So if you want to see WWE, it ain't coming to Paducah, You had to go for the drive. So
yeah, it's a little ways away from where you are, but it's like that. It's the nearest closest venue that you can go to see a show. I mean, got to take that opportunity, when it comes.
Yeah, so just along those lines, the first major pay-per-view I ever got to go to Dudley Games, which was Survivor Series tournament for the WWF Championship. The Rock turned heel and went with Vince McMahon that night. And my memory of that was, Rock was a big baby face going into it, turns heel that night. I'm probably 12, 13 years old. And I went with my uncles, and I only had enough money to buy certain shit, which, of course, I spent most of my money early because I'm a kid. And these $25 Brahma Bull shirts, when he turned heel, people were ripping them like in half. And I
No
was
kidding.
like, no, save me one of those. But what a crazy experience. And major pay-per-views never really came to St. Louis. They would have a Raw or a SmackDown or a house show, but that was one of the main four, and I got to be there. I was way up in the nosebleeds, but I will always remember that because, like I said, you can't go in Paducah. We had to. That was a whole day trip. 4 hours driving there, 4 hours back, plus all day in the show, but pretty cool.
Yeah, the Attitude Era was just such a hotbed, for professional wrestling. It was a boom period because not only the WWE, but you had WCW and ECW. They were doing their thing, and the indie promotions as well. Just what an incredible time to be a fan. And you'd mentioned St. Louis being the venue, the host city for Survivor Series. That also is an historic town, too, when it comes to pro wrestling.
Yeah, Harley Race, huge there. Of course, Flair coming through there with the NWA. Really, really, really huge in the territory eras. By the time that I started wrestling, there was a few independent promotions there, nothing really major. But those kind of towns, if you've got a big talent that's not signed and they're just traveling through, a lot of times those guys will pick up that booking on maybe, a Saturday when they did a Friday show, a couple hours away, and you might be able to get them through there, but
sure. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I've had on quite a few people on this podcast that are from the area, from St. Louis. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Herb Simmons and SICW. They're Southern Illinois Championship Wrestling. They're kind of on the border. Yeah. I've gotten to talk to some of those guys before, and I'm just impressed with how they're able to keep that tradition and history alive, because that was just wrestling at the Chase was like the place to be in that area. And so I was just, fascinated by the history of St. Louis wrestling, getting to hear about it, read about it. And I've actually been a fan of the territories, just getting to learn about all of them, Memphis, Nashville.
Yeah. My introduction to wrestling was national TV. But by the time that I really started getting interested in it, it was still in the tape trading days where you had to, get a VHS from somewhere. But I would get these old tapes from flea markets or, sometimes the local movie place, that you rent stuff. They might have the major pay-per-views, but every now and then they would get these matches where you would see this old Memphis stuff or, like you said, old St. Louis stuff. And these guys are working their ass off, and the place is packed and people are going bananas, for this stuff before the major expansion. So for me as a fan, before I even started wrestling, to go back, and still now, I'll, find some of this old stuff and just watch an hour of wrestling, and you'll learn something every time. You'll be like, man, why don't they do that anymore?
I know.
But the styles, they've always changed and adapt. And the cool thing is you can still do that stuff now, and people haven't seen it because it's kind of been hidden,
Yeah, like you don't see a lot of brawling anymore these days. It's all about the high spots and the high flying, And the thing is they were doing that back in the day with the cruiserweight division.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of interesting how times have changed, everything's sort of evolved, but I'm willing to bet that you'll see kind of that old school kind of feel kind of come back in some sort of capacity.
It's just like clothes, Eventually it becomes cool again. It's like on a cycle.
Right. So you get involved, you start watching it. Was there a point in time where you said, this is what I want to do for a living?
You know, I watched and watched, and it started off just me wrestling. Like, I mean, I have a sister that's 9 years younger than me, so you know, I used to beat my sister up all the time on the trampoline and stuffed animals around the house. And then next thing you know, my buddies started coming over, and we started filming our own shows and writing out match cards, and you know, recording basically backyard wrestling. And then it got to the point where I was like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I need to find out how, where, you know, when, whatever. And I actually watched my dad took me to go see Beyond the Mat in theaters, and it wasn't in Paducah. You could not see it. It was kind of considered an indie film still. And so they just weren't showing it. And he found a place that was about an hour and a half away and said, hey, you know, we're going on a road trip. Didn't tell me what we were doing. And we get there and we watch it. And, you know, if you're familiar with the documentary, there's a scene in there where they show a training school.
Yes.
And so, you know, just like anything, it's like, okay, well, where's the closest training school? It's like, and this was, you know, the internet was available, but it wasn't like it is now. It couldn't just pull the phone, you know, and people really didn't have local businesses to advertise as much as it is today. You know, we take that for granted.
Not that prevalent, no.
Eventually, I stumbled upon a flyer, found a flyer, and found a show, and you know, went to the show, watched it, and as they were tearing the ring down, I was so mesmerized with the whole process that I wanted to watch them take it apart piece by piece. I wanted to see everything. And the promoter came over and said, you know, you can't be here. You got to leave. Show's over. And he gave me a business card. And that's how I met. His name's Jamie Phillips. He's one of the promoters in Kentucky, where I kind of learned everything, where I went to training school. So if I wouldn't have seen that flyer and tracked that down, and if I wouldn't have seen the movie to get to that point, you know, it's crazy how all this stuff kind of intertwines and the stars kind of line up sometimes, you know.
Sure. Now, you had mentioned earlier you had a little bit of time in the Army. Tell me about that a little bit. And, you know, when you start training to become a wrestler, you have to be disciplined and, you know, have to get in shape. And seems like when you were in the Army, it kind of prepared you for wrestling.
Well, I wrestled way before that. So, you know, I actually went to training school. I played sports, all the, you know, elementary school, middle school. I played baseball, football, basketball. And by the time I got to high school is when I found the training school. So when I was 14, freshman year of high school, I talked my dad into letting me train. And I learned how to train and wrestle there, and they actually taught me how to do collegiate wrestling when I started. It wasn't just professional wrestling. They made us do complete physical fitness exercises, you know, for hours before I was ever able to even put my foot in the ring. You know, I had to earn that privilege. You couldn't just get in the ring and, you know, start learning stuff. It was, they wanted to break you down and see if you were going to come back and stick around, you know. And so way before the Army, I had already been trained by grown men. I was a kid, you know, I was 14. But I really
young.
wanted to do it. Now, you asked about the Army. My time in the Army was nice. Met a lot of good people. You know, I enjoyed it, but I actually put wrestling on the back burner. Only wrestled about once a year, and it wasn't my passion. My passion was not the Army. So a lot of other personal stuff, you know, girlfriends and this and that doesn't matter anymore. They ain't around anymore. But the wrestling actually helped me with the Army as to where you thought it would be vice versa. In my situation, it's just wrestling was there for me early, and I went and trained, and it was hard. You know, I missed prom missed plenty of dates of things that were going on that you would go to as a high schooler. I didn't care about. All I cared about was wrestling. And that's all I wanted. Plenty of relationships, friendships, that just kind of went away, but it wasn't the path that I was on. And all I wanted to do from the time I started training and getting the ins and outs of it was, how do I get in the ring and how do I get to perform? That's all I wanted to do.
Well, you had a dream, and you were passionate about it and you wanted to follow it. So you only did what was natural. So that's a good thing. Not everybody can say they had a dream that young, but you were able to know what you wanted to do and you went after it.
Yeah, and see, in the state of Kentucky, you have to be 18 to wrestle. So for the first 4 years that I was an active wrestler, which when they put me in the ring when I was 14, I'd been training for 6 months. So I get to say I had my first match at 14, but I basically just got beat up by my trainer. The show was at a nursing home outside. Oh, so half the people that were there didn't even know what was going on. So it was more like an exhibition. It wasn't really a legal show. But of course, at the time, they say, hey, we want you to wrestle. And there's going to be, 100, 150 people there. You don't care what they say. So, yeah, I had my first match at this outlaw show at 14, which, like I said, was just getting beat up. But for the first 4 years, I had to travel to Indiana, Illinois, Tennessee, all these places that did not require a license. And so I wasn't able to actually wrestle in my hometown in Paducah and let anybody that was friends or family with me see me in Paducah until I was already out of high school.
You're in the business now. Tell me about your first few matches.
So my first match that I mentioned to you, my first character that I came up with, shamefully, it was Torch. Torch. I had a black pair of leather pants, flames on the side of them, went out, bought this shirt. Me and my buddy were in a tag team when we got these shirts, airbrushed. We're going to be 3rd degree burn. We got this big thing all set up, and then we sucked it up that day. And I took that and burned it all up. Torch died that day. It was terrible, terrible, terrible. But then after that, they saw what I could do. I listened. I knew what I was doing in the ring. I was comfortable. I was athletic. I was probably only 170, 180 pounds then, more of a cruiserweight in my early career. Now I'm a heavyweight. I'm 250. But back then, a lot of the older guys that were my age wanted to work with the younger guys because they knew we could do a lot of stuff athletically, and they could make us look good, or we could make them look good, vice versa. Mm-hmm. So my first few matches, they were all in Tennessee. Like I said, you can't wrestle in Kentucky until you're 18. So I would have to go on these 2-3 hour road trips and go wrestle and come back. And so at first, it was my dad taking me everywhere. My dad went on the road with me, recorded all my matches, and he was just happy to support me, sitting there watching. And that happened for a while, a few years. And I was actually working for the NWA in Nashville for Nick Goulas, George Goulas. I think it's Nick was the son. And Mike Porter, which I'm pretty sure he passed away. But I was working for NWA Main Event.
I think it was George Goulas because Nick, George, I think, had died. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, his son, which is still alive, he ran it with Mike Porter. Porter's passed now. But they need a referee one night. And my dad, going to all this stuff with me, he always watched wrestling with me. Once I got into it, it was something we connected with. My dad's sitting in the front row, and I'm like, well, my dad can referee. And he's sitting there eating nachos, and I come out and I tell him, hey, dude, they need a referee. And he's like, what? I'm not wearing the right shoes for that. And I was like, Yeah, they need a referee. And so my dad actually ends up going out to the car. They get him a ref shirt, ends up reffing all night, and he gets a interview on TV. And they're like, senior official, and start talking about him. And he ends up getting a bigger payday than I get that night. And that started his journey into the business. Now, he ref for a while. My dad played football and played college a little bit, and is a big guy. He's a little bit shorter than me, but after he reffed for a while, people kept asking me, like, why is he reffing? Why is he not a wrestler? And we actually bought our own ring, and I actually trained my dad how to wrestle. And he had his first match with me, and he actually wrestled for about 7 or 8 years. And whenever he was ready to hang it up, I went back into town and had his last match. So really cool. I got to have father-son body experience.
Unbelievable.
We got to tag a few times, and it really cool. He's managed me here in the last few years. When he passes, I'll always have that. I mean, how cool is that? Nobody can really say, my dad took me to the ring or my dad did this with me. And
no.
I don't have these sad stories where I didn't get to do it with my dad. My dad always supported me in this. No matter how much money I made, no matter how many people were there, my dad was always on the up and up for the wrestling. So I'll always be grateful for that because, if you don't have the right support, it's hard to do this. You don't always make a lot of money. It's very painful. You've got to learn how to kind of navigate through the waters. Wrestling business is a business. I mean, people are in it to make money. People are in for themselves. I mean, because at some point you have to be in order to, get that spot, get that contract, get that, booking, TV taping, or whatever. You got to believe in yourself enough to be able to, fill those shoes. And it's easier if you've got somebody to help you. Now, the people that don't have the support, they get a drive in them because they don't have the support. But I can never say that. Dad always, and my family, well, I mean, my mom really don't like it. She never has liked me getting beat up, so to speak, but she supports me. So I'm definitely very lucky in that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, you can always say that you had, your father share moments with you in the ring, and be there for you, and nobody can ever take that away from you because you did it. It's there. You'll always have that. So that's so cool.
Yeah.
Who have been some of your favorite opponents to work with over the years?
Yeah, man, I've wrestled so many people. My best friend that I started with, he's still active. He's more into the death match scene now. He wrestles his Thai blade. We actually had a really good match in February of last year for a company down here. Mississippi Athletic Commission was there, and we had a match that got banned, basically, but caused a lot of controversy down here. Got a lot of eyeballs on the product. We had Tommy Dreamer there that night. He told us that we had a great match, and I mean, that's pretty cool to see one of the guys that you saw as a kid come up to you and give you that kind of advice. And I always look at everybody that's around the ring to see how they're reacting to me. And that's part of my training. I just had really good training. But when you're able to look and you get somebody to laugh or to smile or to do whatever, if you just get that one guy that's standing there this blows, if you can get that person to kind of stop for a second, pay attention to what you're doing something right.
Sure. No doubt about that. Any
Yeah, Ty Blade, really fun opponent of mine. My earlier days, Ricochet actually started he's from Paducah. we wrestled at a company in Metropolis, Illinois, which is about 15 minutes from Paducah. But when we were really starting to get some momentum, we'd had some matches, been going places. Trevor Ricochet, me and him had some really cool matches. Got to go to some places and do some things. A lot of fun down here. I wrestled NWA champion Mustang Mike a few times. Solid dude, really jacked, really good worker. He runs a show in Louisiana. They just had Jimmy Hart last night and had about 1,000 people there. So wow. He does really good fundraising stuff, and he's a great promoter in Louisiana. I got to work the Rock and Roll Express last year, Ricky and Robert, which I've been on shows with them before, but they're really professional, really cool dudes. They were a lot of fun to be in the ring with.
Icons, legends, man.
Yeah, I mean, and not arrogant at all. Whenever you could be. Both of them really stand-up guys. And Robert was, you got to watch Robert. Ricky still can move a lot. Robert's got some hip issues, but Robert will get a hold of your wrist and start doing stuff to you. Next thing you know, you'll be on the ground. So I learned with Robert, you don't get over there and start wrestling with him because he's an old shooter. He knows how to put you on the ground. So,
right. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, down here, in the South, there's a lot of good guys. Here on the Gulf Coast, where I'm at in Mobile, we're an hour from Biloxi, Mississippi, or if you go the other way, you're an hour from Pensacola, Florida. If you go the other way, you're an hour and a half from New Orleans. So we're in a good central area. And there's just a lot of good talent down here. Not a whole lot of eyeballs down on the Gulf Coast. There's not a huge market in this area for a national brand. The company I work for now just got a TV deal, and they're trying to get that going. We actually have
congratulations.
Scott Armstrong, from the famous Armstrong family. Bullet Bob's son, Road Dogg's brother. Scott actually is our executive producer of our TV show. It just started airing last week. So Scott's got a whole lot of knowledge and has been doing a lot of really good stuff for us and helping move the product that we have down here forward. So hopefully we'll get some more momentum with this because, like I said, this area, there's a lot of talent down here.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. That's amazing that happened. Congratulations. I hope it takes off. I really do. I mean, that's another product I think that, more people should check out.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. So, let's talk about some of the stuff that you've done outside of the ring. Got some charity shows you want to talk about, and some any kind of charity work that you've done in the past, as regards to outside of wrestling. What stuff have you done? What organizations have you worked with?
I actually have worked with several different cancer organizations. St. Jude's breast cancer awareness. I actually run a disc golf business in my off time, so I do a lot of work with different disc golf organizations. We do a lot of charity raising events down here. We do tournaments where all the proceeds will go, to whatever cause that we have. And with the wrestling, especially now, I've been doing it for over 20 years. We've done a lot of shows where one of the guys passed away or their family member passed away. They didn't have the money for funeral expenses, raise the money that kind of way. Wrestling's always good and for fundraising. And when you've got a good group of guys, you can do a lot. Now, the show that I'm most passionate about that I do and it's actually what got me back into wrestling. I had kind of stopped for a couple years. I was really focused on my business career, and I was in management, and I was making really good money, and I was actually miserable because I didn't have wrestling anymore. And the show is called Wrestling for a Cure. It's in Springfield, Illinois, every year, and they get everything donated to them. So they get the venue donated to them, which is at the Illinois State Fairgrounds. All the food that's there for the night, it gets donated to them. They've had, several wrestlers, Hall of Fame guys, huge laundry list of people, autographed shirts and pictures, and they do a big raffle and stuff like that. And they take donations throughout the entire year. And all the guys that are on the show, they actually donate their time, and they take all that money and we give it to St. Jude. So nice. the reason that it got started is because one of the guys that wrestles with me in Illinois, now he's more running as a promoter. His name's Jason Wilhite. Jason met this lady that her son had died from childhood cancer. He was only 6 or 7 years old. His name was Dusty Cameron, and her story really touched him, and he decided he was going to start this Wrestling for a Cure show. He's going to do it once a year, and they were just going to see how it went to raise money. And last year was the 6th year we've done it in a row. Every year you have a pretty stacked card, and then the main event every year is the Dusty Cameron Memorial Battle Royal. So the mother is still very active in the fundraising, and she comes to the show every year. She hands the winner the trophy, and we're able to, honor her son every year, but also raise a lot of money. In the 6 seasons that we've done it, we're over $60,000. So averaging about 10 grand every year, we've handed straight over to St. Jude. So it got me back into it because I kind of, like I said, backed off. They asked me if I would come do it. I went. I had a fatal 4-way match. I had a fantastic match. I won the match, and it reignited my passion for the business. Came back down here to the Gulf Coast. It's like, man, that was awesome. And I just hit the ground running with Mac Daddy Duds. I started that character right at the first Wrestling for a Cure. And since I've done that character and currently am, I have been all over the country. I flew out to Colorado in December, had a match. I've been to Houston, Texas, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida. I've had Louisiana. I've had to have a wrestling license in most of those states. But, I've just been all over the country. I got to meet some huge legends. I did this con called the Red Stick Wrestling Con. We had probably about 1,500 as far as live fans in attendance. But Jake the Snake Roberts was there, Sergeant Slaughter, the $1 Million Man, a lot of these Hall of Fame guys that I looked up to as kids, I got to wrestle in front of and then got to meet. And it was just really, really cool experience where in Paducah, not necessarily going to have those kind of shows.
Right.
So,
and you get to bring a little bit of, what you grew up watching and going to see in the big time to these people that are seeing this. And it's like, that's an awesome experience. I mean,
it's really cool, man.
That's pretty amazing that you're able to get like Hall of Fame legends show up at these events, because it's not every day that these things happen.
The guys a lot of the promoters down here understand that they need to, get some of these guys around, and a lot of these guys are coming through this area anyway. Like I said, we're in a good central area for the Gulf Coast. This was a hotbed for a long time.
Oh yeah.
The Florida territory was huge. You know, you got all the Samoan guys like Roman Reigns and the Usos that are from Pensacola. You know, right around the corner. Actually, his dad, Sika, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He runs a show over there, which I've never actually worked for him. But yeah, they're still very relevant in this area.
Yeah, I mean, who'd have thunk it that like the Samoan dynasty is stronger than ever now with the bloodline and The Rock, killing it in Hollywood and
He's got his daughter now.
yeah.
Like they're
Yeah.
all over the TV, taking up all the spots.
I know.
But
Rikishi's still out there doing his thing. Every once in a while I see him on TV.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. So who came up with that idea, wrestling for a cause or
Right. Jason basically decided that he was going to do that, and then he got several volunteers. There's a few key guys that really organized everything. Jason and another guy named Tim Givens. He's the vice president, and they get guys booked from all over the Midwest. I'm usually the one that comes the furthest, but I wrestled up there, so I was friends with these guys then. And when they asked me to do it the first year, and I went up there and did it, and then I met, Dusty Cameron's mother, and she told me the story and everything. It really spoke to me and it made me feel really good to be able to contribute to something like this, because I've always loved wrestling, but when you can segue that into doing something for the community too, for something that you love, it's like a double payoff.
exactly?
So yeah, what they did is a great cause. There's been a lot of guys that have come through there. I was just looking while we were waiting when we got disconnected, and you just did a interview with Tyler Bodine.
Yes.
He's been at that show a lot.
Yeah.
He's got some health issue stuff going on right now.
Yeah,
It's
I
kind of
saw
wild.
that.
So I hope everything gets better with him. But yeah,
me too. Yeah.
I didn't even look at all the episodes that you've done so far, but I'm probably know several of the people because now the wrestling is this weird like little circle of friends where this person knows that person and this person and that person, and you're like, oh, okay, and then you run into the same guys.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, it's a close knit community, especially with guys that have on the indies and have done it for a long time. Like I said, I was interviewing a lot of guys from St. Louis, the St. Louis area. They run shows in Missouri like all the time, and they're doing benefits and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool to see this, this go on. And it's kind of one of the reasons why I started this podcast was to showcase the good work that a lot of that wrestlers do in their community.
Well, like the guys up there, they're really good and really organized. They do, like I said, events all year. They get with the local news. So they're on the news, they're on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the guys that actually, he was a manager and a personality, an interviewer, and a few years ago he got into the Battle Royal and he really plugged it on the radio. He was an entrant into it and really gets a lot of good publicity. I mean, because it's always, good cause or whatever, but with the right promotion, anything can work, for the community.
Sure.
And a lot of the guys really do care. You don't always see that either. You only see a certain side of us. So to be able to do everything, like if you see a group picture with all the guys together, you're like, oh man, they really did something. Because I mean, when you talk about 60 grand that we just gave over, that's pretty powerful at some point because some kid needs medical attention and can't afford it. And that's the good thing about St. Jude's. They don't turn down any kid. They take care of all of them.
No.
And then they just get people to pay the bill later.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It's really, you know, heartwarming to see the work that they do and what you guys do to put a smile on somebody's face.
Well, and you know, they've done, this will be the 7th year. Man, there's some good wrestling. Like a lot of the up and comers from Illinois, the Chicago area, some guys from St. Louis, some guys that are just have heard about the show and want to get in on it.
Yeah.
It's a good place to showcase it. And the building that they have at the state fairgrounds, it's a really cool building to wrestle in because actually it goes up a 2nd floor and all the wrestlers, we're on a balcony that we can see down and see the whole show from start to finish from where we're at. So really, really cool to wrestle in there. And the acoustics is really nice. Cool stuff.
That's very cool. That's very awesome. Why do you feel passionate about helping out in your community?
I was raised by really good parents, and they always, you know, showed me that you got to help people a lot. You know, I'm not going to get into like religion or anything like that, but I was raised to where I did go to church with my grandma and help out with community stuff. And people need help, and some people just, it's really not their fault. You can't really judge everyone because you don't know what everybody's story is or what they've been through or whatever the case may be. But helping people that can't help themselves sometimes will fulfill you, you know, and to see someone grow that you gave a little help to might be that little nudge that they need. You know, you talk about powerful stuff. It's powerful when people can achieve, you know, something that might be minuscule to you and nothing, minimal, you know, to them might be a huge achievement, you know.
Definitely.
So just making it to that next day for some people is all that they have to live for.
Yeah.
You know, and I've lost friends in the wrestling business that made me also want to give back, you know, and some of the causes that some of the guys deal with, you know, with suicides in wrestling. I've had 2 friends that was what they chose to do, and it's terrible. And people don't talk about it enough sometimes.
No, they don't.
And I don't like talking about it. It's a terrible story. But maybe somebody needs to hear, you know, they need to reach out and speak to someone.
Sure.
Because my tag team partner, he went through a really difficult divorce, and you know, just he made some bad decisions, and that's what happened. And we actually did a memorial show for him, and we paid for his funeral, and we raised money for his children, and we had a big tournament that was organized up in Kentucky. Actually, it was a few years back. I got some footage of that somewhere. That's a really, really cool tournament to be involved in, to be able to see his kids and everything and raise money for them. That was one of those, like I said, those weird situations where wrestling comes through and pays the bills sometimes when nothing else is there. And if you get a good group of guys together, you can do a lot.
Sure.
But it's not just the wrestlers, you know, to put on a wrestling show, if you don't know from start to finish, it's not an easy task. You got to find somewhere that's going to allow the wrestling. Some people are scared of it. They think it's more like MMA or boxing. They don't want to let you rent the venue. So you got to start out with that. Then once you get the venue set in place, then you've got to get the guys together. You've got to make sure you got the equipment. You got to have a ring. You know, if you're going to do the entranceway, lighting, your sound equipment, you know, you got to have all that in place, and somebody's got to set that up, and somebody's got to run it. And so I tell the young guys, because I actually run a training school down here. We call it the Diamond Mine. I tell these young guys, you know, you have to be able to appreciate the guy that, you know, mops up at the end of the night, that sets that ring up. Now, whenever I trained, I had to learn how to do everything. I had to run security. I had to set the ring up. But if they needed me at the snack bar, I had to go over there. You did whatever they told you to do to keep the show running. And no one's bigger than the show. they ain't got the camera guy, nobody sees it. If they ain't got somebody set the ring up, tear it down, there's no wrestling. I mean, you gotta not be addictive, everybody in the business when it comes to that. Because
right.
I mean, it's just like the circus. You know, you don't just have the lions. You've got 15 different attractions, and it all has to come together with all this stuff in the background that people don't see. So put a wrestling show on, it's not an easy task.
No, there's a lot of moving pieces that have to fit into the puzzle for it to work, you know, and so it's a production, it's a big production, and it requires so many people, not just the performers, but everybody, you know. So it's just, I'm just amazed at how well, you know, a show is just put together, like from an indie show all the way to something like WrestleMania. It's a spectacle. You know, it really is. There's nothing like it in the world.
No. There's not. That's why we're sitting here talking about it. I mean, me and you've never spoken before, and we've talked about wrestling for over an hour, and with just a handful of questions. It's just such a vast universe. And if you really appreciate it, from just talking to you, it seems like you appreciate the older stuff and like that. It's just like any history with anything. If you don't understand what it was and where it started and all of that, then you really can't appreciate where it's at now and where it's going.
Right. Right. And I think that's something that, you know, hopefully the next generation will understand, and so on and so forth, because that's how you grow, you know, as a fan. You know, talked earlier about, like, you know, you'll never outgrow it. I don't even think wrestling's something to outgrow anyway. I think it's something that's only just natural. That's like, if you're into it, you know, you can be into it for forever.
I mean, I'll be that old man still watching it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always something I've been intrigued by. I have a different appreciation for it now, especially from that time that I saw the first just hint of wrestling. Like, oh, you know, especially seeing it like at the WWE level on TV, you're just like, I mean, guys are like real superheroes. Like, seriously, you're just like, oh my God. And then when you see one in person that you met on, you know, you saw on TV, you meet them in person, and you see some of these guys, and some of the guys that are like big, like the first time I saw Kane in person, I was just like, oh my God, you're an enormous person. Like seeing Sheamus's back the first time I was at a live event, or Lesnar, like seeing him walk to the ring, you're just like, good Lord. I mean, some of these guys are just walking spectacle, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they're titans. They're larger than life characters. And, you know, I mean, I've been to my fair share of conventions, and, you know, I've attended WrestleManias and all that stuff, and I'm just seeing these guys. I'm like, oh my gosh, in the flesh. Wow.
Yeah. I've been to one WrestleMania, and I went New Orleans. So what's that?
Yeah.
Not with Dan O'Brien. That was 30. It was like 34.
Yeah.
Something like that.
That's when Lesnar and Reigns had their match, and I think Lesnar won, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. That was the Ronda Rousey debut.
That's right.
That's the match that I was looking the least forward to, and then being there live, like once they got going, it was like they just pulled out all the stops and made her look like $1 million.
That was a really good match.
It was really fun and entertaining, and that was the one where I was like, I'm gonna get up and go get some popcorn. I'm gonna go get a soda. I started to get up and start watching it and start getting into it. Then I never ended up at the snack bar. I'm just standing in the hallway watching, you know.
Well, I went to WrestleMania not this one in LA, but last year in Dallas, and I was very fortunate enough to see Stone Cold Steve Austin come out of retirement. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that would happen?
What a cool moment, for sure. Yeah.
I never thought Stone Cold would ever lace up a pair of boots again, and that match with Kevin Owens was worth every penny.
Oh yeah.
Because he's been talked to come out of retirement for years. Like I think like he was
turned it down. And turn it down. He had his ride off in the sunset, so he just didn't want to do it. And then, yeah, it was exciting. And I mean, like you said, cool to be there. It was like holy shnikes, like Stone Cold.
Oh man.
Yeah,
wow.
Always been a fan. And I learned of him whenever he was Stone Cold. I didn't really pay attention to him in WCW when he was Stunning Steve. And then going back and watching those matches, he was just awesome in the ring. It's like they were morons for letting him go, but it was the best thing that ever happened to him financially. And we would have never got Stone Cold out of it. But going back and watching those old matches that he had when he was in the Dangerous Alliance, stuff like that, really cool to watch that stuff.
Definitely. You could even argue that Stone Cold was a Paul Heyman guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Same with Taker as well.
Yeah, he was Big Red from Texas. And actually, Paul Bear was his manager his first match against Bruiser Brody, and he got his ass whooped. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Texas Red. Yeah. No, I mean, I have this vast amount of wrestling knowledge, like you, just being a fan, and my wife gets on to me like, how many Ric Flair interviews are you gonna watch? I'm like, why? Is there a new one? Like I'm gonna watch. You gonna watch something besides wrestling? Yeah, and then I'll like put on like some other documentary, But
yeah,
I'm a student of the history of it, and knowing the background of stuff is really cool. What a lot of people don't see, especially from our perspective, is I can look at a match and watch it, and then I actually go back and I remember that day. I remember what happened in the back. I remember what restaurant we went and ate at when it was over. Whatever dumb shit went down, because I mean, as you've seen in reports and stuff, like there's a lot of ribbon going on, and there's some stuff I can sit here and talk to you about. There's some stuff that I probably shouldn't say out loud, and it's just part of it.
Yeah, I mean, we keep it clean here on Wrestling with Heart, so we're safe. Trust me. Trust me. Hey, listen, Mac, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show. It means a lot to me and the listeners and the viewers watching on YouTube. Where can people find you on social media, and what shows can you plug coming up?
Let's see, Facebook, Instagram, MacDaddyDuds, MacDaddyDuds, just like Milk Duds. You go to YouTube, type that in, Facebook, Instagram. But Diamond Championship Wrestling, I work for them, and they have a show called Synergy. It will be available on YouTube soon. They do a Sunday night show as well. Just type in Diamond Championship Wrestling down here on the Gulf Coast. And that's all I really need to plug. Appreciate you having me on. Good talking wrestling with you, man.
Good talking with you as well. You're more than welcome to come back on, too.
Yeah, maybe I'll catch you down the road, and we'll give you an update on some of this stuff.
Definitely. Would love to talk to you again.
I appreciate it, pal.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good night. Bye-bye.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.